What if the worst day of your life was actually the best day of your
Best.
life?
Yeah.
Because you'll never confuse like a ho hum average day for the worst day of your life, but a lot of times you will confuse the best day of your life for the worst day of your life. That's just a
Mm.
problem, a defect in the human brain that you can fix.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back, Championship Leadership Podcast. We got Nick Stageberg here. We are right in each other's backyards, which is awesome. But we were actually connected from someone that's not in our backyards. That's always interesting. Todd Armstrong, I believe, is the one that put us together. Todd's amazing, and but nice to meet you. And hopefully, there's no reason we shouldn't meet in person at some point here. But we're really close. How you doing?
I think we tried to set this up in person, but we just have demanding schedules mutually,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
this is a great way to get started.
Exactly. Um, Championship leadership. What comes to mind for you when you hear that? What does that mean to you?
To me, it means servant leadership. It means truly having the heart of a servant. There's a lot of leaders out there who are leaders in title, or they lead, due to a drive for a sense of significance, or if you one anecdote I heard from one of my coaches is if you take 100 Fortune 500 execs or whatever to a top of a mountain, you ask them, what do you want to shout for the whole world to hear? The majority of them, they would say "F you." Like he does coaching with some of these people, and that's what they have, this giant chip on their shoulder, and that's what's kind of propelled them to large leadership roles like that. But I don't think that leads to a satisfying life. I think that we all
Yeah.
have a light within us that drives us to serve and to give and to grow. And when we lean into that, just incredible things happen in a way that's really fulfilling. So that's what championship leadership means to me.
I love it. It's beautiful, man. And yeah, I've been doing this a long time, almost 5 years now, and it's just so fun because it's never the same answer. So appreciate it. Tell us a little bit more about you and Black Swan Real Estate. I believe you and your wife partner up in your business as well, and maybe just a little bit about the journey and how you got to where you guys are at and what it is that you're up to today.
Yeah, my wife Elaine, she's my full partner in the business. She's a lion, and it's so neat to be able to work with your spouse. That's a special kind of relationship. You have to have a very close relationship with someone. We're actually doing an hour-long relationship mastermind call that we're leading here later today on working with your spouse, because it's just
Nice.
it's the closest relationship you could ever have. Most people, they just spend they spend more time really at work than they do with their spouse,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of hide from work with your spouse or hide from your
Yeah.
spouse at work or whatever. But when you're working with your spouse, you got to have a good
There's
relationship, or
no
you're not having
hiding.
a day. Yeah. How we got here. My wife is a physician trained at Mayo Clinic. I did a whole career in IT. Had a couple very successful startups. The first one went from 13 million in venture capital to 100 million in private equity sale over the course of 9 years. That was a healthcare banking software development startup. And then I had the privilege to create a startup for the Mayo Clinic, the entrepreneurship movement, creating a software development consultancy that would compete with outside vendors for contracts. And over the course of 3 years, we went from just a handful of people to 13 teams of engineers I was leading, doing about a third of all new development for the enterprise. That was a much faster kind of growth trajectory. And that's what I've learned is when repetition is the mother of all skill. And the first one took 9, the next one took 3. And then this real estate thing was kind of the next startup after that. So I stepped back from my career in IT. My wife stepped back from her career in medicine. And now we have a private equity firm that has about a third of $1 billion in assets under management. We've been able to grow that in the last 3 years or so, and just serve people in a much more tangible sense. I feel like housing. Lots of people want to make the world a better place, a better place to live, but we get to like literally make the world a better place to live just by
Yeah.
creating high quality, housing for our community. And it's a lot of fun. So this is our latest adventure, and that's kind of the path that brought us here.
Well, why real estate though? I mean, you guys, your backgrounds were not in real estate. Doesn't sound like.
Yeah. So in the tech world, when that first startup was getting ready to sell, I did a ton of research on what do you do if you're about to win the lottery. Like
Okay.
you hear these stories about people who win the lottery
Yeah.
and they're bankrupt a year later or something like
Right.
that, $100 million payday or whatever, and somehow because money doesn't really help anything. It amplifies
Yeah.
who you are, what you do. And so if you have if you're broke, you're going to get even more broke if you get a 7 or 8 or 9 figure payday. And all my research said invest in real estate. And I had lots of mentors in my life. I've always been a person who sought out mentors, and I researched how they made money, and they all made money in real estate. They all had kind of like an active profession. They were an attorney or an
Yeah.
accountant or a physician, but the ones who really achieved great financial success, 100% of them achieved it through real estate without exception. And statistically, that's how it works. So the vast majority of millionaires in the United States are made through real estate. And just the average American, even though they're putting away their money into a 401k, the average American, 70% of their net worth is going to come from real estate, mostly from the equity in their personal home. So even though you're not putting like your retirement money away into it, it's still, real estate is just such a powerful wealth vehicle that you will end up with more wealth in your personal home than you will in your stock portfolio. And I think that says a lot about how good of an investment those two vehicles are, what their outcome.
Right.
So we built a small portfolio over time, and eventually had a big enough portfolio that we could kind of step back from our day jobs that could support us. And I retired for about 24 hours. It happened that the last day of my job, the following day, there was a Tony Robbins seminar. I'd never heard of the guy, and seemed like kind of a cult leader or something. My wife got a free ticket for helping someone kind of launch a business. And so we took this free ticket to Tony Robbins, and that was life changing. That was a pivot point in my life, and that's where we decided.
UPW?
Yeah, I went to a UPW in June of 2019. So that was life was never the same after that.
Right.
And we do tons of Tony Robbins Platinum and stuff, and we do tons of his content. They were actually doing an event here for the next 5 days. We're about to start that event. In any case, that's when we said, you know what, we're going to make our next startup this whole real estate thing, and retirement's going to be much shorter than we thought it would be. And just applying all the kind of culture of excellence and unique progressive practices you see in medicine and technology, and applying them to an industry it's not very progressive. It's a pretty regressive industry. Your average real estate investor might be 70 years old, still doing things with pen and paper, might not be able to very effectively. And we're able to kind of run circles around a lot of these groups with just very progressive management practices.
Love it. That's awesome. Yeah, thank you. What who have been some championship leaders that have impacted you? I mean, Tony Robbins sounds like it's definitely been one for you.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, more so always about than who it is. But like, what are some characteristics that really stood out from these individuals that really maybe are some that you've taken on and helped mold who you are as a leader?
Absolutely. So I'll share a couple of stories, kind of a bland one, and then maybe a little more intense one. But I think really good mentors and leaders, what they do is they equip you with a lens through which to see the world. So there's no such thing as reality. There's the reality that you focus on, and you have all these lenses that you use to see the world. And one of my mentors, he was an attorney, had a large real estate portfolio, and I did some like IT consulting for him, basically as an excuse to just learn from him. So when he couldn't find an email in his inbox, he might call me. I'd come out and help him find an email, and kind of pepper him with questions and ask him how he became so successful as I'm helping him with his email. And one day it's like, yeah, Nick, I'm looking for this email. I can't find it. It's a golf cart invoice. It's really important. I need to find that today. I'm like, sure, I'll come on out. His name is Paul. And I'm digging through his email, and I pull it up and I'm like, is this it? And it's an invoice for like hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I'm like, Paul, how many golf carts is this? Why? I know you like playing golf a lot, but why the heck do you need, hundreds of golf carts? And he's like, oh, it's for the country club. I'm like, oh, that makes sense. So are you like helping the country club? Or are you like on the board there? You're kind of volunteering or something? He's like, no, I bought the country club. Thanks a lot for the invoice, Nick.
Yeah,
like,
thanks.
Wait. You buried the lead there, Paul. You bought the country club? Like it just had not occurred to me that was even a concept. Like,
sure.
I grew up, homeless from time to time in Section 8 housing on government assistance. So the idea that I could ever be a member of a country club seemed aspirational at the time.
Right, yeah.
And the notion that an individual person could own the country club. Paul, give me a second. Let's walk back through this. How did you come to own a country club? And he says, well, Nick, country club, it's just like any piece of real estate, right? And you know that I own a bunch of real estate. And I'm like, yeah, but it's like a business though, right? He was like, well, yeah, but like an apartment building, it's just like a business. A house that you rent out, it's just like a business. And they were doing a bad job running their business, and they weren't managing it very well, and they were kind of running off the good members, and they weren't kicking out the bad members. And pretty quickly they were upside down. It doesn't take much, losing much revenue or not controlling your expenses, and suddenly you go from positive to negative. And so I kind of saved them from, foreclosure essentially. And I bought the country club for, eventually the value is essentially the value of the dirt. And then, me, I like to play golf. So I went and played golf there a lot and brought all my friends and kicked out the bad members and turned it around. And now it's worth a lot more money. And I'm like, well, how much did you pay for a country club? It's like, oh, I got it on terms. What does that even mean? It's like, oh, I didn't put much down. I helped them get out of this terrible situation, and I eventually refinanced it. So I guess I don't really have any money in it now.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay, you yourself own an entire country club. You don't have any mind expanding. Yeah. And it really equipped me with a lens that everything you see in the world, a person created that. A person built that thing, and it's a thing that could be bought or sold, that could be mismanaged, or the management could be improved, and you can create value for people everywhere. And so now when I drive down the street, I think most people don't even see the world. That they just see this little kind of very narrow, okay, I'm driving to McDonald's, and I really just see my destination and my world in my car. And Paul really helped me see the world as a place, a playground where you can do anything.
Right.
And another kind of really salient moment for another big, kind of mentor in my life. I mentioned Tony Robbins. So that first UPW, my first startup, right before my first startup sold for 9 figures, they terminated me and seized my stock options. So they actually sent me on a vacation, an all expense paid vacation, to say thank you and for getting ready to sell. And then while I was on vacation, they made arrangements to fire me. And then I was packing up a moving truck to relocate to Rochester, Minnesota. My wife matched Mayo Clinic for her residency. They said, "Oh yeah, go. You're good to go. Like, you built this company." And then as we're packing up the moving truck, they terminated me. So it was a pretty aggressive maneuver.
And this was the Mayo Clinic?
No. This was that first startup.
Oh, okay, the first one.
Yeah. So that big payday that I was gearing up for, and in real estate, to rehearse for, that big payday never came.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't realize it, but I had this giant chip on my shoulder. For years, I had this giant chip. Doing that second startup for me. I'm a spiritual person. I think my path is guided. I have a bachelor's degree in computer science, but I also have a bachelor's degree in ministry. And I think God brought me to Mayo, where there are no stock options, and you're really serving this incredible mission. My software and the software that the people that I led, literally saved lives.
Yeah.
And it gave me some time to heal from that. It took a lot of ego to have the amount of pain that I had kind of built up inside myself from that first startup. And I didn't even realize it was there. And when I went to that first UPW, Tony gets you all jacked up.
Oh yeah.
And he says, all right. I want you to think about the worst thing that's ever happened to you. I want you to think about the worst day of your life. And I think for most people that pops right into their mind. Oh yeah, right. When this person screwed me, or this thing happened. And so for me, oh yeah, the day I got fired. I mean, I had PTSD. I had every single moment. I slept for 6 months. I relived that day I got fired when, a decade of my prime years in tech got stripped away from me. I mean, in tech, you get old fast. And that was, that was it. And it got taken from me. I had this story I told myself, and Tony gets you whipped up about it. And he says, okay, so I'm not saying this is true. But my hallucination is, what if the worst day of your life was actually the best day of your life?
Yeah.
Because you'll never confuse like a ho-hum average day for the worst day of your life, but a lot of times you will confuse the best day of your life for the worst day of your life. That's just a problem, a defect in the human brain that you can fix. So how would you hold yourself? Would you have a different posture? How would you feel about yourself or the people in your life if that was the best day of your life? And it just hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, for years I've been carrying these assholes, these people that that screwed me over, and I was going to show them, like, they probably didn't even remember my name. Like, I'm not going to show them anything, and I'm not going to build this life for them. I'm building this life for me. And in a moment, I realized that it really was the best day of my life. It really was the best thing that ever happened to me, because if I hadn't been fired, I would just be in the next startup. and the next one after that. Because you don't typically get a big payday. You roll forward your equity into
sure.
the next deal and the next deal, and that's how you get to, have this big puddle of wealth. But I mean, I worked for like 36 hours straight the day my first child was born, because that's just the culture in tech. It's a toxic pressure cooker culture. And I sincerely thank God that that was ripped away from me. I held it so tightly, and that was my identity. I had to.
Yeah, you probably wouldn't have done it yourself otherwise, right?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
So I do look back at that as the best day of my entire life. Anyone who's listening today, I would challenge you, like, think about what is the worst day of your life, and what if that was the best day of your life? Because only you get to decide what anything means. These are all things that Tony has taught me, that you get to write your own story and no one else's. And man, that's such a better story, isn't it? And it doesn't matter. Like, neither of them are true. It's just the meaning that I assign it. And so today, with the utmost sincerity, I do, like, this sounds ridiculous, but I will make more in a week today than I made in a year, in years in that career, because all that was taken away from me. I had to rebuild myself. I rebuilt myself so much better, so much more whole, so much more vibrant, so much more passionate, just excited to be alive. And so I sincerely thank God that was ripped away from me, and I do think of it as the best moment of my life. And those are the type of things that I think great leaders can achieve, is they can help people take control of their destiny and reshape themselves.
Yeah, man, that's powerful. I love it. Yeah, that's beautiful. And thanks for sharing that. Because I think there's the listener right now that's probably still holding on to that worst day. And it
aren't we all?
It's crazy to see when we hang on to those things, how long we choose to really suffer because of it. So yeah, beautiful. What's a vision for you? What are you guys looking to accomplish? And more importantly, I guess, like, what's the impact that you're looking to make? Because I think that's a huge part of championship leadership is your vision.
Amen. So I guess that really calls up another big influence or leader in my life. His name is Christian, and my wife and I were building this real estate portfolio, and then we decided to serve investors and to help them build real estate portfolios. And Tony kind of illustrated the selfishness that in the past we had not served investors, that we said, no, this is just for me. In fact, we made up a metaphor to turn away the business. People would come to us all the time and say, hey, we see you're building this real estate portfolio. We'd like to get involved. Could we invest? And we say, no. We have a lot of kids. I've got 4 kids, 7, 5, 3, and 1. So we're really busy on that front. Hopefully we'll get some more. But we don't want to open a daycare. We love taking care of our kids, but we don't want to open a daycare, which is just so selfish. We want to grow our own wealth. We don't want to help you grow your wealth. And we see the selfishness of that today. So we started serving investors, and we do kind of one-off small deals and stuff. And when Christian came into our life, he's in the private equity space, but has a background in tech, and that's kind of how we bonded. He started out almost identical background in technology to me, except he went from selling your company to private equity to becoming private equity. Think about the quantum leap to make that jump there. And I remember him maybe physically shaking me by the shoulders and saying, Nick, why don't you have a private equity fund? I said, I really don't like the industry. It feels like a very value extraction oriented industry. How many fees and splits can I kind of opaquely take off the table? And he just said, well, Nick, why don't you just change the industry? How crazy is that? You ever have someone who believes more than you believe in yourself, and believes in you like this exponential kind of thing that they think you can achieve that you hadn't even contemplated because it seems so unreachable. And a short while thereafter, we launched our first private equity fund, and our big, wild, hairy, audacious goal is to change capitalism in some small way, the way Warren Buffett has changed capitalism with the pledge. You can't keep it. You have to give it away. So our private equity fund, it has no fees whatsoever, which is just unheard of in the industry. We get no profit from it until our investors have gotten a full return of capital, and that's a 50-50 split after that. So it's something that like my 7-year-old could easily understand, whereas your typical private equity fund, most of the income that comes to the fund manager comes in the form of opaque fees that no one really understands how any of this stuff works. And really just a race to see who can kind of squeeze the most value out of the investor or the operator of the asset or whatever it is. And then 5% of our profit goes to our staff in a profit share, and 5% of our profit goes to charity. We built a school last year, a 40,000 square foot school. It's the coolest thing I've ever done with my life. And we're already making a small change in the, kind of small ecosystem of real estate syndication, private equity funds that we play in. And it's a long-term business plan. It's not a quick flip. It's an indefinite hold period. In fact, we've never sold anything. So we think that long-term hold really aligns incentives between the investors and management and the residents ultimately. Because I've looked at apartment buildings where they've transacted 5 times in the last 10 years, and it's not a good thing for society when you have that sort of business plan coming through town, that new business plan coming through town every couple of years. So we make money. We make lots of money. It turns out that doing the right thing is actually the profitable thing to do. Crazy, imagine that.
Crazy.
But we think that we are making the world a better place, and that trickles all the way down to the kind of the micro scale. So just a quick story to explain what we do. We're not a faith-based business. Let me be clear about that, but we are very values driven. So we bought a Class D apartment building in a historic area, a beautiful historic building, but it's 100 years old, hadn't been renovated in that whole time, and it had been managed that way, the way you manage a building like that. Yeah. And one of the units in the basement, the tenant, hadn't paid rent in a couple of years. This was during the COVID, eviction moratorium, and there was drugs and prostitution and God knows what else happening in that unit. And we couldn't even get into it before we bought the building. And you tend to get those buildings at a discount when you're buying, a set of problems like that. Yeah. And day after closing, we did a safety inspection on the unit. We noticed the tenant, did a safety inspection. We said, listen, we're going to inspect for any safety hazards and remove those, for the safety of all tenants in the building. And we walked in, it was a pretty devastating scene. I mean, growing up, I have seen some shit, and this was just unlike anything else I've ever seen. We had to go back and get like a Home Depot bucket to fill with drug paraphernalia, and we had to remove pipes and all manner of stuff. Yeah. And we said, technically this is your property. If you'd like us to return it, we're required to do so. And we'll make sure law enforcement's present as we remand custody of that personal property. So just let us know if you'd like us to return this personal property. And we're going to be back tomorrow and the next day and the next day. And we support this, drug rehab program in our community. My wife's father died of a drug overdose. There is zero judgment in our heart for your life and your soul and the beautiful person that you are. We want to serve you, and we are happy to dial a phone to give you a ride, whatever it takes, and we will not give up until we serve you. Do you understand? And we had to come back just a few more times, and that person found help and is in a much better place today. And that unit is now a beautiful unit that we've did a gut remodel on, and it's a win-win-win. We were able to, I think, steer a person's life back towards, well, frankly, life. I mean, I don't think they had much time left with the way they were living their life, and a way that serves the community, and then ultimately, again, it's crazy, but doing the right thing is actually the very profitable thing to do. When you can buy a building like that and execute that kind of turnaround, most people who do what we do, they buy an apartment building and they repaint the counters and repaint the cabinets and repaint the tubs, and then they have to flip it before the renovations, quote unquote, wear out. Like, you're not doing it right if your renovations wear out after 18 months. Right. So we rip out the cabinets, we rip out the counters, put in premium cabinets and stone counters that are going to last for a century. And then when we still own that building 20 years from now, we're going to be really happy with it. And we don't increase the value of the building by like 10% the way most people do. We double the value of that building. And it's extraordinarily profitable when you're able to kind of execute that sort of turnaround. So that's kind of our vision, is to just keep doing that, do more of that. We've got a third of $1 billion assets under management today. I think we'll have, $1 billion in assets under management in the not so distant future. And we're a proof of concept. We think that the world is and will take note of the way we do business. And with any luck, it changes the world for the better in some small way, and whatever small impact that we can make. So that's our vision right there.
Love it. Great vision. Beautiful. Well, I know our time is wrapping up here shortly. So just one last question really for the listener. If there's, one or two things you could give to them today that they would take action on, what and help move their life forward today, what would that be?
Sure. So I know many of your listeners are entrepreneurs, real estate, they're in a leadership role of some kind or another, or would like to be in a leadership role. And in order to be a leader, you have to have followers. So I hate to point out the painfully
Amen.
obvious. That's just how it is. And I would vigorously encourage you, if you're listening to this podcast right now and you're contemplating hiring someone, bringing on a new W-2 employee in whatever organization you're a part of, your organization, someone else's organization, go make that hire, go make that job posting. We're about to be in a labor market that's a lot more favorable. It's about to be a lot easier to hire people. And I find that most people, they're doing the emotional or rational calculus wrong on hiring new people. They see payroll as a liability. I don't want my payroll to get too big. I can't support it. Well, every single person you hire, they should be bringing in an amount of profit equal to their salary and hopefully greater. So just out of the gate, if you are hiring and you're worried you can't make payroll with those hires, like you have a poor business model, you're not charging enough, you're not ready. But then I find there's a whole other camp of people where they know that they could probably keep that person busy, they could probably support that person, but they say to themselves things like they have limiting beliefs. They say, I can't afford that person, or I don't have enough cash to pay that person's salary right now, or I don't have enough cash flow to pay that person's salary. So we have a rule of thumb: we keep 1 year of salary in cash on hand just to support that burn. I think that's a sacred covenant we have with our W-2 employees, that we're not going to grow too fast, so we have to have layoffs and that sort of thing. But that's an extreme kind of cash position to occupy.
Sure.
For most people, let's say it takes 90 days to get a new employee up to speed, and we have check-ins at 30, 60, 90 days. And we make sure that employee, they're getting up to speed and they're able to support their salary by reducing expenses or increasing revenue in an amount that pays for their salary. So I encourage everyone to shift that calculus that they're making just a little bit. I find people, they rely on 1099 contractors. They try to stretch their existing workforce, which really just kind of kills morale and lowers your revenue or increases your expenses somewhere else in a way you can't see. I promise you it is. If you're trying to just squeeze productivity out of the people you have now. So I'd encourage you, if you're thinking about it right now, if you're listening to this podcast right now, put it on pause and go put up a job posting, go talk to a headhunter, go hire that person you are thinking about hiring and make them successful. And if they're not successful 30, 60, 90 days in, you're failing them. You either hired wrong and you need to fix that, or you're failing them, you're not leading them, training them, onboarding them the right way. You don't have to have the business today that can support them. You need to be able to build the business today that can support them, and they are going to help you build that business. That would be hopefully an actionable item anyone listening to this thing could just take action on right now.
Hey, man, love it. That's beautiful. Thank you. I appreciate it today, Nick. For the listeners, stay right here. Don't go anywhere. If you've enjoyed this conversation, there's more to come in the next episode. Again, thanks, Nick, for your time. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.